Hello and welcome to another episode of Down to Disness, a monthly series where I pick a Disney animated movie, talk about its history and its impact on pop culture. This month's movie is Lady and the Tramp, released in 1955, the same year as Disneyland. Right off the bat, what's great about Lady and the Tramp is that it was Disney's second film ever that was an original storyline. Dumbo was the first, and while it was based off of a children's storybook, the story didn't have like a plot like the movie did. So Lady and the Tramp and Dumbo were movies that Disney really got to write their own story and adjust everything as they got to know the characters. During production of Lady and the Tramp, Ward Green wrote a novelization of the movie, and Walt asked him to release it about 2 years before the movie came out so that the public would become familiar with the plot and the characters from Lady and the Tramp. So Lady and the Tramp is a movie I hadn't seen in a very long time, so I rewatched it before researching for this video, and it's one of those weird ones. In this series, I like to talk about what made each Disney movie unique and special to the history of animation, and Lady and the Tramp is really one of those that doesn't have exceptional music, it doesn't have super famous voice actors, but we'll get to that in a second. It doesn't have anything visually new, it's just fun and family friendly, which is still special. Walt himself described it as a really fun movie to make. I feel like it was probably really low pressure and they just made something fun to watch, enjoyable, and carefree. Speaking of dogs, this movie is intentionally drawn from the dog's point of view, which is why you never see Jim Darling or Darling's faces. Can we talk about how weird it is that the woman's name is just Darling? No one ever found out if that was just a pet name or her real name. Like I said, this movie doesn't have a star-studded cast, but they did hire Peggy Lee to voice Peg, the dog from the pound. Peggy Lee actually later sued Disney over this film. Not only did she voice Peg, but she voiced the cats Cy and Am, and she wrote music for the film. Her original contract stated that she would be paid in royalties for all of the transcriptions of the film in the future, but at the time that contract was written, VHS didn't exist, and now DVDs, Blu-rays, etc. She claimed that she was owed additional money for VHS tapes, which would fall under transcriptions with her contract. And she ended up winning over $2 million for this case in 1991. Another famous voice actress in this movie is Barbara Luddy, who voices Lady, and she was actually over 50 years old when she voiced Lady, who's 6 months old in the film. What is that? 3.5 in dog years. What I think is special about this movie is that a lot of it is based off of Walt Disney's life. The opening scene where Jim gives Darling Lady in a little hat box is apparently based off a time when Walt forgot about a date with his wife Lillian and made it up to her by giving her a puppy in a hat box. The setting of Lady and the Tramp is also supposedly based off of Walt's hometown in Marceline, Missouri. As with many Disney movies featuring animals, lots of dogs were brought into the studio while they were in production on Lady and the Tramp. But it wasn't just dogs. Animator Wooly Reitherman actually kept a cage full of rats next to his desk so that he could study them for the fight scene at the end of the movie. Okay, so there are two very important things about Lady and the Tramp that contributed not only to animation history, but movie history in general. The first is that this movie was the first Disney movie to be made in Cinemascope widescreen. This presented a lot of new problems for the Disney animators, namely that one singular character no longer filled up the space of the screen, so they practiced spreading out the cast amongst the screen to make it look more full. They also made the decision to film in widescreen halfway through production, so they had to go back and extend the backgrounds of almost every shot. Then, finally, when they were finished, Walt was really upset to find out that a lot of theaters couldn't even screen the movie because they weren't able to screen widescreen films. So the Disney animators had to make a different ratio version so that it could be released in theaters. It was just a big mess, but it paved the way for widescreen versions to be made, and obviously everything we watch is in widescreen today. And despite the snafu with the theaters, it was Disney's highest grossing film since Snow White at the time it was released. And the other really remarkable thing about Lady and the Tramp is the infamous spaghetti kiss scene. Funny enough, Walt didn't want this scene to be in the movie. Thank goodness it ended up in there because it's probably one of the most famous movie sequences of all time. Not just in animation, not just in Disney, but in all of movie history. How many times has this scene been replicated in live action and animated movies outside of the Disney company? How many times has it been replicated within the Disney company? It is just such a crazy famous scene that sometimes I forget that it originated with Disney. It's kind of remarkable that any movie could have such an impact on everything. All in all, Lady and the Tramp is what I said. It's just a very fun movie featuring really memorable characters and a lot of laughs. If we gloss over the subtle racism with Cy and Am, the cats, it's a pretty perfect movie. Very sweet music, very lovely animation, groundbreaking canon for the Disney company, and of course, Jacques. the best character in Lady and the Tramp, in my opinion. So let me know in the comments down below what you think about Lady and the Tramp. As always, leave suggestions for what movie I should do next on Down to Disness. I know a lot of you are begging for very specific movies and I seem to be ignoring you, but I'm not. I just have a very specific plan, but believe me, I hear you, and I'm gonna give you what you want eventually. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you very soon for another video on this channel, and I'll see you next month for Down to Disness. Bye! This month's movie is Lilo and Stitch, released in 2002. A running theme with Down to Disness is that I found that a lot of Disney movies that are my favorite, or kind of the most beloved throughout Disney history, were flops when they were released.